Everyone in the Sullivan family has their role. Nick, the charismatic youngest, Noelle, the perfectly adjusted middle daughter, and me, Holly, the odd one out, the one who left, the one who thinks she's better than everyone. Funny how earning things on your own can turn you into the villain of the story. At 32, my life finally seems to be on track. I live in an apartment I bought on my own downtown, far enough from my parents' house to breathe, yet close enough so they can't accuse me of abandonment. I earned my degree on a full scholarship, built a solid career in finance, travel when I want, and have my own money. And every month, without fail, I transfer a considerable amount to help my family. It's almost like I pay a monthly fee just to belong to the Sullivan clan, as if I had to make up for the crime of having left and built something on my own. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. The Christmas decorations at my parents' house seem frozen in time. The same lights, the same nativity scene, even the stains on the tablecloths are exactly the same. But this year, just like every year before, my suitcase is filled with gifts that cost far more than I should be spending. A family tradition. Nick shows up empty-handed with stories about his new job, which he'll soon quit. Noelle brings generic little gifts bought at the last minute, and me trying to secure my place at the table with big boxes and elegant cards. Holly always goes overboard with the gifts, my mother says with that smile that never reaches her eyes. It must be because she doesn't visit us enough. It never matters that I helped pay for Nick's college, which he didn't finish, or that the car Dad drives was financed by me. When Nick loses his third job in a year, it's just a phase. When Noelle makes comments about my weight or my boring job, it's just the way she is. Whenever I mention any personal accomplishment, the silence is deafening. The Christmas dinner was set, the fireplace lit, and Noelle couldn't stop showing photos on her phone. Yesterday's celebration was so special. I froze midway through stuffing my fork into my mouth. Which celebration? An awkward silence took over the room. My mother cleared her throat. It was just a small family get-together. Nothing important. Nick, already on his third glass of wine, laughed. That huge dinner at Aunt Carol's. It was amazing. Too bad you couldn't come. I wasn't invited. Of course you were, my mother quickly interjected. I sent a message last week. I said it'd be today. Noelle quickly slid her phone away, too late. She'd already seen the date, December 24th, yesterday. You told me it was today, the 25th. My voice came out calmer than I expected. My dad studied the turkey as if it held the secrets of the universe. Mom waved her hand dismissively. It must have been a mistake. You're always so busy with that job of yours. It wasn't a mistake. I set down the cutlery. I have the message right here. I showed them the conversation on my phone. Mom glanced briefly and shrugged. Well, it doesn't matter now. We're all together on the day that really counts. Except Aunt Carol, Uncle Phil, the cousins. Noelle began listing off, her voice laced with that fake, innocent tone. It was just a little mix-up, Holly. Dad finally spoke, not even looking up. Let's not ruin the Christmas spirit. The Christmas spirit. The perfect excuse to sweep any issue under the rug, as if the birth of Jesus could magically justify blatant lies. Everybody makes mistakes. Nick raised his glass. Let's toast to family. And Holly, that money you always send, it's hitting the account next week, right? I already have some plans. What plans? I asked, as everyone pretended to toast like nothing had happened. Nick ran his hand through his hair. I already bought a few things. A PS5. That pair of sneakers I showed you. You already spent the money I haven't even sent yet? He genuinely looked confused. It's Christmas, Holly. Besides, you always send it. It's practically a guarantee. Mom laughed like it was the cutest thing in the world. Nick's always been impulsive. Remember when he was 6 and spent his entire allowance on stickers? He's 30 now. And you've always been so prim and proper, Noelle commented, cutting off a tiny piece of turkey. Not everyone needs to be perfect like you. I looked at the Christmas tree. The gifts I brought were piled up underneath, huge compared to the others. Gifts bought in an attempt to fill a void that grew bigger every year. Gifts that would be subtly criticized, even though they cost more than I should be spending. The money I send every month, the extravagant gifts, the visits during which I swallowed cutting remarks. It was all part of a transaction. I paid and paid, only to be tolerated. Never loved, never truly part of them. The truth hit me like a bolt. I wasn't Santa Claus. I was just an ATM with legs. I'm not sending any money next month. The words slipped out of my mouth with a surprising ease, as if they had just been waiting for permission to exist. The clatter of cutlery on porcelain stopped abruptly. "You're joking, right?" Nick laughed, but I could see panic rising in his eyes. "It's just another Christmas joke, isn't it?" "It's not a joke." I took a sip of wine to hide the tremble in my hands. "I've decided to stop sending money. To all of you." Mom set her fork down with a calculated delicacy. "Holly, dear, I know you're upset about the dinner mix-up, but we shouldn't make rash decisions during Christmas dinner." "It's not rash. I've been thinking about this for a long time." "But," Nick looked genuinely confused, like a kid trying to figure out why Santa couldn't bring a live unicorn. "You always send money. It's just how we do things." "How we do things," I repeated, feeling something inside me break. "Is that how you see it? Like I'm a monthly subscription service?" Dad cleared his throat, finally stepping in. "Holly, we get that you work hard for your money, but we're family. Family helps each other." Family. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Family doesn't lie about meetings. Family doesn't treat one of its own like a walking ATM. Family doesn't pretend to need help when all it really wants is to keep someone under control. Noelle rolled her eyes with that look I knew so well, like, "Here comes Holly with her drama." "Typical," she muttered. "First you buy us expensive gifts to rub in our faces how much money you've got. Then you threaten to cut off the help when we don't dance to your tune." "The gifts?" I looked at the colorful pile under the tree. Carefully wrapped packages with imported paper, handmade bows, cards with sincere messages that probably wouldn't even be read. "Keep them. They're the last ones." "That's ridiculous." Mom lost her calm tone. "You can't just..." "I can, and I will." I placed the napkin on the table and stood up. "Thanks for dinner. Merry Christmas." "Aren't you going to open your gifts?" Dad asked, his voice betraying concern. Not for me, I realized, but for the uncomfortable situation I was causing. "I don't need them. Actually, I never needed any of the gifts you've given me over the years, mainly because they came wrapped in guilt and obligation." Nick, his face now shifting between pale and red, also stood up. "Holly, you can't do this. I've got bills to pay. The car, the rent." "You've got a job, Nick. Use your salary." "But it's not enough." "Then get another job, or cut back on your expenses, or do what any adult would do instead of expecting your older sister to solve all your problems." I grabbed my purse and coat and walked toward the door. No one followed. No one asked me to stay. I only heard my mom's quiet but audible voice. "She'll come around. She always does." But this time, as the cold December air hit my face, I knew I wouldn't be coming back. The period between Christmas and New Year has always been an odd time, a limbo where the days don't really count, when the world feels suspended between the holidays. But this year, for me, every hour was clearly marked by the incessant ding of my cell phone. On the morning after Christmas, the first messages came in. My mom: "Hope you got home all right. When you calm down, we can talk about last night." As if my decision was just a childish burst of anger that would pass after a good night's sleep. Later, my dad: "Your mom's really upset. Call when you can. No, we miss you, or we're sorry." Just a suggestion that I'd caused a problem and needed to fix it. On the 27th, Nick kicked off his campaign. First, casually: "Hey sis, how are things? About that Christmas talk. You weren't serious, right?" When I didn't reply: "Holly, I really need that money. Rent is due on the 3rd. Then, "Man, I don't know what I'll do if you don't help me out. You know how tough things are." As the silence continued, the messages became more desperate. "My landlord isn't as flexible as you are. He's going to kick me out. I've already asked all my friends. They just don't understand you. I bought those gifts thinking you'd send your money like you always do. It isn't fair to change the rules now." On the 3rd day, Noelle chimed in with her subtler approach. "Mom is really hurt. You know how sensitive she is at this time of year. And then, I get that you want to set limits, but cutting off the family completely seems extreme, don't you think? I ignored them all. Every unanswered message felt like removing a brick from a wall that had held me captive for years. On the night before New Year's Eve, the messages changed tone. My mom: "Your brother's in serious trouble, Holly. If you really cared about the family, you wouldn't let this happen." My dad: "Nick might lose his apartment. Is that what you want?" Noelle: "I always knew your success would drive you away from us. Typical of someone who forgets their roots." And finally Nick, in quick succession: "You're heartless. I thought family meant something to you. I guess that mansion and your rich friends are more important than your own brother." I turned off notifications and put my phone in a drawer. With each ignored message, a strange feeling grew inside me. Not guilt like I'd felt before, but relief, as if I were finally breathing after years of being submerged. The doorbell rang at 7 p.m. on New Year's Eve. I already knew who it was before even looking through the peephole. Nick was standing in the hall, wearing the leather jacket I'd given him the previous Christmas. His eyes were red. Whether from crying or from alcohol, I couldn't tell. "You didn't answer my messages," he said as I opened the door, with no greeting, no smile, just an accusation. "I know. Can I come in?" He didn't wait for an answer, stepping into the apartment as if he had a right to. "We need to talk." I closed the door and led him into the living room, where he was already scanning the place as if looking for signs of change. Maybe he expected to find proof that I was suffering as much as he was. "Are you going to miss Mom's New Year's party?" "Yeah, because of the Christmas fight." "It's not a fight, Nick. It's a decision." He flopped down on the couch with that irritating familiarity. "Look, I get that you were upset about the dinner mess-up. Mom screwed up, but cutting everyone off like this is too much, don't you think?" "I'm not cutting anyone off. Just the money. That's basically the same thing." His voice rose an octave. "You know I need that cash." "For what exactly? To buy another video game? Or branded sneakers?" "That's not fair." He raked his hand through his hair. "I've got expenses, bills, like everyone else. But it's not as easy for you. You've got your perfect job, your perfect apartment. None of that fell from the sky, Nick. I worked for every inch of what I have, and I didn't get the same opportunities as you. Mom always said you were lucky with that scholarship." "Luck?" The word lit something inside me. "I studied every night while you were out with your friends. I kept perfect grades while working part-time. It wasn't luck. It was a choice." Nick suddenly got up and started pacing the apartment. "I didn't come here to listen to a lecture. I'm here because I'm screwed." He stopped and softened his tone. "Look, I just need this one last deposit to clear my debts, start the year without problems." "How much?" He hesitated. $4,000. $4,000? For what?" "For the TV, the console, the laptop, a few other things, and the overdue rent." I shook my head in disbelief. "How much of your own salary did you even save this month?" His silence said it all. "Nick, I'm not going to pay for your poor choices." "Not anymore." Something dark flashed in his eyes. "You've always been like this, haven't you? Acting like you're better than everyone. The perfect Holly who never makes mistakes." "I'm not perfect. I just take responsibility for my own actions." "And now you're going to leave your own brother on the street? Is that it?" "You're not going to be left on the street. You're going to have to make some hard choices. Maybe even sell some of the stuff you bought, like adults do." He laughed humorlessly. "So that's it. The great Holly Sullivan finally showing her true colors. You know what Mom always said? That one day your success would go to your head. And what else did she say about me behind my back?" "Enough." He stepped closer, almost threateningly. "Let me tell you one thing. You're going to regret this. When you need the family, and one day you will, you won't find us there. Like you never were before. What's the difference?" His words hit him like a slap. For a moment I saw something in his eyes. Not anger, but understanding. A spark of comprehension that was quickly replaced by defensiveness. "You're going to regret it," he repeated as he headed for the door. "Happy New Year, Holly." The door slammed, and the silence that followed was the most peaceful sound I had ever experienced. The digital clock read 23:59. I sat alone on my couch, a glass of champagne in hand, watching the fireworks through the window. For the first time in years, I wasn't at some noisy party trying to please people I barely knew, nor was I at my parents' house trying to ignore their sharp comments about my life. My phone stayed silent for the hours following Nick's visit. No messages, no calls, as if the entire family had decided to put me in an emotional quarantine. At the stroke of midnight, I lifted my glass to the lit-up city. Happy New Year to me. A lonely celebration might seem depressing to some, but for me it was a relief. No expectations, no performances, no constant feeling of walking on eggshells. Just me, my choices, and the promise of a fresh start. The first hours of January arrived with an almost surreal lightness. I slept without the usual heavy weight of family guilt, without planning in my head how much I'd need to transfer to the family account next month, without calculating which gifts I'd have to buy to make up for my so-called successful existence. The next morning, I woke with the winter sun filtering through the curtains. There was no alcohol hangover, only the noticeable absence of that emotional hangover that usually came with family interactions. I made some coffee while listening to a podcast, something I'd never do at my parents' place, where any intellectual interest was met with jabs about me thinking I was superior. I savored every sip without interruption, without having to mediate any morning drama, without having to constantly watch out for mood swings around me. Throughout the day, I checked my phone out of habit, but there were still no messages from the family. The silence went on the next day and the day after, as if they were testing my resolve, waiting for the void to pull me back into the family orbit out of sheer desperation. Instead, I started filling that space with other things. I called friends I hadn't seen in ages, real friends who appreciated my company unconditionally. I organized my apartment, getting rid of old unused gifts that I had kept out of obligation. I even started planning a trip I'd always wanted to take, but never did because my personal luxuries budget was always tied up in family needs. The silence, which should have made me feel isolated, was actually bringing me back to myself. Years spent trying to buy love had created a twisted version of who I was. Always available, always generous to the point of self-destruction, always willing to swallow hurt in the name of family harmony. Somewhere on the third day of the new year, I realized I wasn't waiting for my phone to ring anymore. I wasn't mentally calculating how long it would be until my family broke the silence. Instead, I was just living, hour by hour, without the constant anticipation of the next crisis, the next demand, the next disappointment. That's when I truly understood what starting a new year meant. It wasn't just about the turn of the calendar, but the chance to break old patterns, to set new boundaries, to redefine what family meant to me. The silence wasn't a punishment. It was liberation. On the morning of the fourth day of the year, I woke up before the alarm even sounded. The sun hadn't risen yet, but I felt inexplicably awake, as if my body knew something important was about to happen. While I was making my coffee, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message from Nick. For a moment I hesitated. Part of me, the part that had been conditioned over years of imposed responsibility, wanted to immediately check if it was an emergency. The other part, the one learning to prioritize my own well-being, suggested maybe I didn't even need to read it. When I finally looked, the message was exactly what I expected. Holly, I know we're fighting, but I need your help. The bank called about the credit card installments. They're threatening to report me. It's only $2,000 this time. Last time I'm asking, I promise. In the past, this message would have unleashed a torrent of emotions. Guilt, worry, duty, resentment, all jostling for control, while I already opened my banking app to make the transfer. Today, I felt only clarity. Clarity about the recurring pattern. Clarity about the empty promises of last time. Clarity about how this dynamic had consumed me for years. And most importantly, clarity about my choice now. With my thumb hovering over the screen, I made my final decision. I didn't reply. Not to say no, not to explain. I just swiped to delete the message, blocked the number, and put my phone back on the counter. The act was simple, almost anticlimactic. There was no dramatic background music, no sweeping epiphany. Just a woman having coffee in her kitchen on a January morning, finally recognizing her own worth. At that moment, I remembered all the times my financial help was met not with gratitude, but with expectation. How the thank yous were quickly replaced by, "When's the next one?" How my generosity was gradually turned into an obligation. I thought about the small humiliations, the subtle exclusions, the seemingly harmless comments that kept me in my place, a stranger in my own family, welcome only as long as my checkbook was open. And I realized one crucial thing: I deserved more, not just from my family, but especially from myself. I finished my coffee and got ready for work. This time, without that usual weight on my chest, without feeling torn between the life I'd built and the one that kept pulling me back. On my way to the office, I passed a home decor store. In the window, a small handmade sign caught my eye. "Sometimes family is who we choose." I smiled to myself. Maybe it was time to start choosing. To build connections based on mutual respect, not on financial transactions or blood obligations. To find people who would celebrate my success rather than resent it. As the elevator rose to my floor in the office building, my phone buzzed again. For a moment, I thought it might be Nick using a different number, or maybe my mom about to jump into the fray. Instead, it was a friend asking if I'd like to join a book club that was forming. "I know you've always wanted to read more," the message said. "I immediately thought of you." I replied with an enthusiastic yes. It was a small step, but a significant one. A move toward the people who saw me, really saw me, and not just what I could offer. When the elevator doors opened, I walked into the office with light steps. Outside, through the panoramic window, the January sun was finally breaking through the buildings, lighting up the city with a new brightness. I set my purse on the desk and switched on my computer. On the lock screen, the date blinked, January 4th. The year was still young, with so many days ahead. Days that, for the first time in a long time, belonged solely to me. I wasn't the Sullivan family's ATM anymore. I wasn't Santa Claus there to grant wishes. I wasn't the odd one out trying to buy my place at the table. I was just Holly. And finally, that was more than enough. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this.